I am a storyteller. For the last 20 years, I've been traveling around the world telling stories to children and adults at schools and libraries, at festivals, conferences, conventions, and in people's backyards. I love telling stories. It's really fun. It's joyful. I love telling stories because it brings a sense of joy and wonder to others. And I love telling stories because when I say the simple phrase, "Once upon a time," we all fall into a shared experience of what it means to be human. But on March 8th, 2005, my understanding of stories would change. I was on my way to work that day when I got the call. "Come to the hospital. It's your brother," my father said. My brother had been driving to work that morning. His car hit a patch of black ice, spun out of control, went into the opposite lane. He was hit by an oncoming truck and killed. There's a saying, I bet you know it. When the student is ready, the teacher will come. Storytellers believe that when the storyteller is ready, the story will come. And after Tim's death, the story of the mustard seed kept telling itself to me. There was once a woman whose only son had died. Absolutely bereft, she entreated the Buddha to make her a magic potion that would take away her grief. The Buddha agreed. He said, "However, there is one little thing I need. It is a mustard seed from a home that has known no grief. If you can bring me that seed, I will be able to make the magic potion." And without another word, the woman just went off in search of the seed. Months passed, and the Buddha was walking down that same road. He looked over and he saw the woman bending over the riverbank, washing clothes and humming. She lifted her head and looked at the Buddha. "Do you still need the magic potion?" he asked her. "Buddha, when I went looking for the mustard seed, I found so many people whose sorrows were greater than mine. I started to help them. And when I was helping them, Buddha, my grief subsided. Save the potion for someone who really needs it." Stories are my teacher. Seeking solace for my own grief, I called up the local hospicare and I asked them if there was something I could do up there. And they asked me if I would come up that summer and tell stories to the children at their Good Grief camp. Good Grief is a camp for children and teens who have all experienced a death in their family. "Sure," I said, "I'd be happy to. I don't really know what I'm doing, but, I'll give it a try." On the day I arrived, there were spitting llamas, barking dogs, hot dogs, games, and me. And as the kids were all coming into the tent, snuggling in for the stories, I started to freak out. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I supposed to talk about death? Maybe I should avoid death. I'm not really a therapist, and I don't want to, misrepresent myself. And then I looked at the kids. They looked happy. They looked normal. So I sidestepped the issue altogether, and I just told them stories I'd tell to any kids. We went up the beanstalk, down the rabbit hole, out to Neverland, and back again. But that night, I felt that I had missed an opportunity to tell those children some stories that would address their singular but common experience with death. I got another chance. That same hospicare called me and asked if I would come and tell stories, this time to the grieving families. "Sure," I said, "I'd be happy to. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've never done it before, but I'll give it a try." And that night, I decided I would tell a story about loss. I began. Hoye, hoye, yo ho. Hoye, hoye, yo ho ho, oh ho ho. There was once a young African mother by the name of Unanana. She had 2 beautiful children. Those children were stolen from her by a selfish, one-tusked white elephant. And as the sunlight, the color of pink grapefruit, fell across our faces, we all heard the hush in the room. We followed Unanana out into the bush, down into the belly of the beast and back again when she had retrieved her 2 children. Now we knew this story. Maybe not this particular story, but we knew this story of unconditional love, of fear, of loss, of resolve and triumph. And that night, as I went home, I knew something had happened, but what and how? Well, y'all know that everything in stories happens in 3s. I got another phone call. But this time it was a message on my machine. And it went like this. Hi, my name is and my phone number is and I was wondering if you would go to Children's Hospital and tell the kids some stories there. I'll pay your gas. What? I couldn't understand a word that woman said. I didn't get her name or her phone number or where she wanted me to go or how I was going to get that gas money. But listen, you guys, I am not a storyteller for nothing. When the damsel in distress gets directions from the gnarly little troll on the side of the road, she better follow them if she wants to be successful. So I just chose a random children's hospital and called them up and asked if I could come and tell some stories. Oh, that would be great, said the social worker. The kids will love it. When I arrived, the social worker told me that the children were too ill to come to the common room, and do I mind going bed to bed? No, I don't mind. That'd be fine. I didn't want to mention to her. I had no idea of what I was doing. As we're walking into the ward, she starts to tell me that many of the children have been in the hospital for months, and some of them have been quarantined, and they aren't playing outside. Their parents can't pick them up because of the tubes. And as she's telling me all of that, I am panicking. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I've never done this. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be telling these kids. And besides, I don't really think I can handle seeing a dying child. And then I meet the first kid. He is adorable. He's got brown hair, freckles. He looks fine. His parents are sitting next to him. They look exhausted. He looks at me and says, I'm going home today. Oh, that's wonderful. I've come to tell you some stories. What do you like? Monsters, he squeals. I sit down on the edge of his bed and make up a story. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who liked to play out in a field near a mountain. And one day the earth shuddered, and a shadow fell across the mountain. And the little boy looked up to see a great big monster with one eye staring at him. And the monster was nearly naked. I finished the story and moved on. The next boy was about 15 years old. He was there by himself. He's in foster care, said the social worker. Hi, I've come to tell you some stories. What do you like? Cars. I'm going to get a car on my next birthday. Oh, I told him about my very first driving lesson with my father when I got the gas and the brake pedal mixed up. And the end of the lesson was when I had perched the car on the edge of the cliff and my father was screaming at me, "The other brake! The other brake!" We laughed and I moved on. I went into the adjoining room, and there was a boy, 12 years old. His body was very bloated. The right side of his body was completely paralyzed. His face was moon-shaped. His head was shaved, and he had a horseshoe-shaped scar on the side of his head. Part of his skull had been removed. His head looked like a smashed squash. He was green. Sitting next to him was his 17-year-old brother in a nest of blankets. His brother was tucking a little miniature cookie inside of his mouth. He couldn't chew it, but he was dissolving it with his saliva, and drool was running down his cheek. I've come to tell your brother some stories. What does he like? Cookies was the obvious answer. There was once a little girl who liked to eat cookies so much that she stopped growing up. She just got round and her shoulders got stooped and she got flat and she couldn't even walk from place to place anymore. She just sort of rolled. And when he laughed, cookies sprayed into the room. He really liked that, said his brother. Tell him another one. Okay. Did you know that monkeys are clever creatures? I told that boy story after story after story after story until the social worker told me it was time to go home. And that night as I was driving back home, I knew that something had happened because of the stories. That when I was telling the stories, the children were remembering what it was like before they got ill. They were remembering what it was like to be healthy. I saw that the stories were acting as a medicine for things that no medicine can cure: loneliness, isolation, and fear. I saw that the stories were so powerful that they could heal a broken mind, a broken spirit, a broken heart. When my brother died, I wanted a lock of his hair. So I asked my mom's permission, which she granted, and knowing he was to be cremated, I just picked up a big chunk of his hair and whacked it off. And then my dad wanted a piece of his hair, so again, I just picked up a big chunk and chopped it off. And then my mom had to have some, and my sister-in-law and my brother and my sister and everybody. When I was done, my brother looked like he had mange. But hey, nobody's going to see it. He's being cremated. It's all okay, right? Well, the next day, my mercurial-minded mother decided we should have an open casket. The mortician called me on the day of the viewing. He said, "I don't know what happened to your brother during the accident, but I just can't get his hair to look right." Oh, I said, "Just do your best." When we got to the funeral home, my mother took one look at Tim in that casket and said, "Close the lid." Now, I no longer ask what story I should tell to a sick, grieving, or dying child, their families, or their caregivers. There are millions of stories in this world. There are thousands of stories in this very room, and we think that they are separate from one another because they happen to you, and not you. But truly, I will tell you, there is only one story. And that is the story of love and connection. None of us knows what we're doing. But when we have the courage to try, when we have the courage to tell a story, true or imagined, we become the hero in our own life, and we allow the listener to be the hero in their own life. Stories are powerful medicine that connect us to ourselves, to others, and to something greater than ourselves. When we have the courage to tell a story, we can heal the world. Thank you. Thank you.